Once upon a time, in a far-off land, I was kidnapped by a gang of fearless yet terrified young men with so much impossible hope beating inside their bodies it burned their very skin and strengthened their will right through their bones. They held me captive for 13 days. They wanted to break me. It was not personal. I was not broken. This is what I tell myself. It was hot, nearly 100 degrees, the air so thick it felt like warm rain. I dressed my son, Christoph, in a pair of miniature red board shorts and a light blue t-shirt with a sailboat across the front. I covered his smooth brown arms and his beaming face with sunscreen. I kissed his nose and brushed his thick, dirty blonde curls away from his face as he pressed his palms against my cheeks and shouted, "Mama, mama, mama." My husband, Michael, the baby, and I said goodbye to my parents, told them we would be back in time for dinner. Michael and I were taking Christoph to the ocean for the first time. We were going to hold him in the warm, salt water as he wiggled his toes and kicked his chubby legs. We were going to throw him toward the sun and catch him safely in our arms. My mother smiled from the balcony where she watered her plants, wearing a crisp linen outfit and high heels. She blew a kiss to her grandson. She reminded us to be safe. We put our son into his car seat. We handed him his favorite stuffed animal, a little bulldog named Baba. He clenched his beloved toy tightly in his little fist, still smiling. He has his father's temperament. He is usually happy. That is important to me. Before getting into the car, Michael double-checked that Christoph was strapped securely in his car seat. He put our beach bags into the trunk. Michael held my door open. When he closed it, he pressed his face against the window and blew air until his cheeks filled. I laughed and pressed my hand against his face through the glass. "I love you," I mouthed. I don't say those words often, but he knows. Michael ran across to his side of the car. After he slid behind the steering wheel and adjusted the rearview mirror so he could see the baby, he leaned into me and we kissed. Rested an arm on the armrest between us, and I idly brushed the golden wisp of hair on his arms. I smiled and rested my head on his shoulder. We drove down the long, steep hill of my parents' driveway and waited quietly for the heavy steel gates, the gates keeping us safe, to open. In the back seat, Christopher cooed softly, still smiling. As the gates closed behind us, 3 black Land Cruisers surrounded our car. The air filled with a high-pitched squealing and the smell of burning rubber. Michael's tan knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel and looked frantically for a way out. His body shook. The doors of all 3 trucks opened at the same time, and men we did not know spilled out, all limbs and gunmetal. There was silence, the air thin, still hot. My breath caught painfully in my rib cage. There was shouting. Hey guys, I'm back again, and as you could hear, I am here to talk about An Untamed State. Now, this is a book that has been on my TBR since it came out. When did it come out? Since 2014. I have been putting off because of the fact that this book is pretty trauma-filled. So I don't usually give warnings, trigger warnings, but when I do, it's because it's merited. And this one, trigger warning for sexual abuse, rape, all kinds of stuff. So if that's not something that you want to read, or it's something, that is just going to trigger you, then I would say give it a miss. That being said, if that's not your case and you're interested in reading a Roxane Gay novel, I highly recommend An Untamed State. This is definitely a 5-star novel for me. I know for some people, they feel like it reads too much like a manuscript, but there's some particular things that I like that she's done in telling this story. First of all, I like how while she's in captivity for 13 days, we get a back and forth between her life, with her husband and her son and her, we get that. And then we get when she's in captivity. So not only do the scenes or the memories that we have that she has while she's in captivity of her son and of her husband, as they give us lots of information about who she is and what her role is as a wife and as a mother and how she meets her husband. All those things we're getting knowledge of, but at the same time, we're getting a break from the oppressive scenes of her being in captivity, which are extremely suffocating. Roxane Gay does an excellent job of getting to the meat of the psyche of how a person tries to deal with this kind of extreme trauma. And I think she does that very well, where she shows the difficulty that person will have to reintegrate back into their family. They can never integrate back into the family as if nothing has ever happened, because that stain that's marked them, that abuse that has marked them, is still on them. They're never going to not have that be a memory for them. So she does a very good job of showing that and showing how not only does she have to adapt to her family, but her family has to adapt again to her. There's another interesting thing as well, is the main character is called Mireille, and Mireille is not that likable. I mean, for many different reasons, she's not likable. She kind of feels like the kind of person you wouldn't necessarily want to be friends with. She seems to be very particular about a lot of things, but her parents aren't likable either. Her mother is not likable. Her father definitely isn't likable. The husband isn't likable. The husband's parents aren't that likable. Even though these characters aren't likable, they go through stages of doing things that are maybe not so nice. And then sometimes they do things that are, quite endearing and nice, which is a very good way of portraying characters in a book to show a certain sense of realism. Because when you have characters that are just all good and all bad, that doesn't really feel authentic, at this point. So I think for that, she does a very good job of showing how characters can do some really shitty things and how characters can do some really great things. So if anything, I would say, as a first novel for Roxane Gay, because I think this is her first novel, I highly recommend you take the time to pick this one up and read it. You will not be disappointed, and you'll probably read it very quickly, because I wound up reading it pretty quickly because, yeah, the trauma was a lot. So I think I read it in like maybe 2.5 days, something like that, maybe 3 days. I was not letting this book just sit around and just have to keep picking it up, putting down, picking up, because then I would never have, finish it, because the trauma would have just, gotten to me so much. So highly recommended if you're looking for Roxane Gay. That's very good. Although I know Roxane Gay is an author that a lot of readers have trouble with, because she writes about such graphic, horrible, events. It's tough for people to, really like her work. But I really do feel like this book deserves 5 stars and deserves to be read by many people. So that's all I have for you today for this review. I hope this gives you an insight without giving away too much. But I think everybody that has thought about picking this up kind of sort of knows what it's about. So yeah, hopefully you will give it a chance if it is on your TBR. So comment below and let me know what you thought of An Untamed State. Let's have a discussion about it. I'll be back really soon with another video. Bye-bye.